and the latest statement that has come through from your organization saying that the government is not being honest about e-tolls?
Yes, well, this has been going on since 2013 when they launched it in December. And it was very quickly, as soon as after 6 months, that they realized they were not going to achieve more than 40% compliance. And this is declined now to 15%. And this is a user pay scheme, or so-called user pay scheme that for it to work, it needs 95% compliance. As we've said in the past, these schemes collapse around the world. So for all intents and purposes, this scheme has collapsed, and yet government doesn't want to turn it off. And you've got to start asking yourself some serious, deep questions, especially against the backdrop of the fact that there are the alternatives already in place, and government has been using them by funding the Gauteng Freeway Improvement Project bonds through Treasury grants, which is what they should have done right from the beginning. And SANRAL have written off the debt. They're not pursuing it anymore. They can't pursue it. So that begs this question: why continue to collect 50 million rand from these 15% motorists that are still paying when you're not putting anything towards the country? There's a handful of companies that support ETC in this collection process. Are they benefiting? Are they?
Yes, I think we have lost Wayne Duvenage. We're going to try and get in touch with him on a better line, and hopefully we will get in touch with him. I'm just waiting for my producer to reconnect us with Wayne Duvenage. Now, the key issue here is civil society obviously is raising these questions. Organizations like OUTA is raising this question. And we know that this scheme, the e-toll scheme, has been controversial from day one. And obviously the government talking about it, we've seen mixed reactions coming from within government. We've seen what the Gauteng government has been saying in relation to national government, but on a national level, and even the latest coming through from the Minister of Transport, Fikile Mbalula, saying that there was no plan to scrap the scheme in the immediate future. Now, what does he mean by this? That is the government still hopeful that the scheme will work, and also looking at other forms of funding mechanisms to fund the project? We know the project obviously has cost a lot of money, but we are obviously it's sadly that we've just lost Wayne, because there's just so much to basically unpack and to discuss on this. Sorry, Wayne, are you back with us?
Yeah, sorry, I'm back with you. Yeah.
Yes. Wayne, yeah, in fact, you were talking about obviously the government, and we're looking at other funding mechanisms in terms of funding the project. But the key issue here is there is a total disconnect at this point in time. We see the Gauteng government saying one thing, we see the national government saying another thing. We've seen the transport minister make a statement saying that there was no plan to scrap the scheme in the immediate future. So I'm not too sure what is their thinking on this particular matter.
Well, neither are we, and this is where we are trying to seek clarity. And this is the problem with our government, is that they do not provide the information, the lack of transparency. They leave us confused. They tell us over a number of months now, in fact years, that the decision is imminent, that there are alternatives, and yet we hear nothing. And I don't have to remind you how many times they've said before December, and this was last year and the year before, and by March the 1st we'll have an answer. So they're very confusing, which makes this whole smoke and mirrors issue of, well, if not, why not? And as we said, the alternatives are there, they're in place, and yet we also know that the scheme at ETC and CAPS Trafficom, who owns ETC here, have been involved in dubious conduct. We know that the tender amount that was very different to the amount that was initially presented from SANRAL. We know that they have been transferring money through the South African accounts to Zambia, $5.5 million of which has been questioned in that country and in this country. We know that ProAsh scored 10 million rand from this whole e-toll matter with no explanation provided to society as to what that money was for. So the too many questions abound, and no answers coming from government. So that leaves us with having to speculate what is actually happening, and is this in the best interest of the public? And it certainly doesn't seem to be that way.
Yes, and obviously this ties in with a statement that OUTA has made with regard to following the money and the money trail. Because at the end of the day, as you pointed out, some of the issues surrounding corruption, the allocation of funds, now these are highly questionable.
Absolutely, and it starts right in the beginning with the Gauteng Freeway Improvement Project, where we paid 17.9 billion rand for a 186-kilometer freeway upgrade, which our engineers and guys that we got involved to do assessment of this entire project, put the whole project down to maximum of 9 billion rand. So, what happened, and how did SANRAL allow the construction industry to benefit and profit here out of this? Why were they looking away? What was their role in all of this, the construction? And that's why we had to borrow far too much money, over 21 billion rand, for the scheme, and the scheme has failed. So we need answers, otherwise, we just will not trust government.
When will those answers ever be forthcoming?
We don't know. We hope they will, but they haven't been for a number of years now. And until they are forthcoming, we can only speculate until they give us or are transparent around what's happening and why there is this lack of information. They leave the public open to having to make up their own minds as to what's going on. But this, no doubt, the amount of dubious conduct that has happened on this project, we put a lot of the indecision down to corrupt practices being taken place.
Yes, and just finally, it's cast in stone that we know that the public is not going to pay, Wayne. So there are very few options for SANRAL and the government at this point in time.
Yeah, no, the public aren't paying, and 85% aren't paying, and there's nothing that government can do about it. They have scrapped the case that we were going to court on, the test case, 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago. They pulled out of that case. They cannot blacklist you and prevent you from getting your licenses. There cannot be any credit rating against you for non-payment. So they have no way of making the public pay, which means it's a defunct policy, and they have to give it up. But our view has always been that now it actually doesn't matter. The public have spoken. Whether they want to turn the lights off or not is regardless of whatever their decision is, it's irrelevant, because we're not paying. We've moved on. And government can continue to toll, and the few people that are still paying, not even government departments, or many government departments are not even paying. So the few companies that are paying, you've got to ask yourself, why are they paying? And are they making profits out of e-tolls, which some of them are.
Well, Wayne, we're going to have to leave it at that. As always, we thank you. We appreciate you taking time out and talking to us. All the best to you, sir, and please take care.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much, sir. Bye.
Wayne Duvenage, the CEO of organization Undoing Tax Abuse, with us this morning on the subject of e-tolls, which brings us straight on to 9 a.m. And next up is a live crossing over to Tabile Duma at the Al-Ansar newsroom, standing by for the news. We come back, there's still a fair amount to talk about. We're talking about the killing or the shooting of a prominent Rohingya leader in the Bangladeshi refugee camp. And also later on in the program, we'll be joined by Yusuf Abramji talking about vaccine administration at the Swartkop site.